friends, I'm Sarah from graceinmyspace.com. Welcome back. Today, we're cooking. So today I'm excited, my husband is joining us. He's gonna do the first half of the video, and he is the meat smoking expert in our family. And so he is gonna show you how to smoke a pork shoulder, pork butt, pork shoulder. They mean different things, but they don't. So we can easily get 3 or 4 meals out of our leftover pork shoulder, even after serving it to a large group of people. And so I'm gonna show you 2 of my favorite ways to use it, and then I'm gonna give you some other ideas for how you can use leftover pork in addition to those recipes. So he's actually gonna show you from start to finish a 10-hour process, condensed down because we don't got 10 hours. And then I am gonna take over and show you how to use the leftovers.
Well, hey, good morning. We're gonna smoke a pork shoulder, sometimes known as pork butt, on a electric smoker. So it's time to get the meat prepared. This particular piece of meat I had brining overnight. Took it out of the brine, it was in the refrigerator, rinsed it off, and now I'm gonna get the meat prepared. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and put some extra virgin olive oil. I use the same hand to spread the olive oil, flip the meat, touch the meat throughout. And then from here, we're gonna go ahead and rub the meat with the spice I've chosen. Put it over the top of the fat cap here. The fat cap on the meat's just this white area on top of the meat for those who haven't smoked before. I know some people will trim that off. I prefer to keep it on, and when I smoke it, I put the fat cap up so that as the meat renders in the heat, that fat then is working itself down into the meat, just providing a more juicier, moister final product. You can go as heavy or as light as you'd like. It's really hard to screw up a pork butt. All right, guys, one thing I want to make sure to mention before I put the meat on here, that smoke right there is a bit more of a whitish color. You don't want to put your meat on the smoker right when it's super intense white. It's gonna see how it's less intense. It's certainly still, there's still smoke coming out of there, but it's like a not as bright of a white. It's more of a bluish tint to it. When you're enjoying it later on today, it's not going to hit you so hard. It definitely have a great smoky flavor to it, but it's not going to be nearly as intense. All right, we've hit 160 degrees. It's time to foil wrap the pork butt. And again, like I said, I do this so that we can maintain the moisture within it. Some people don't. The cool thing about smoking meat, it's totally your preference. Experiment with it, have fun. I've done it a whole bunch, and I find that when doing pork, it tends to dry out if you continue to let it go. So you can see that fat cap's really starting to render down into the meat. It's starting to kind of brown up a little bit, which is what we want. Okay, so we've got it wrapped up. I'm gonna put it back in. Again, remember to keep that fat cap on the top so it continues to render down. One thing that really helps, guys, is these gloves I have. They're silicone so that my hands don't get burnt when I'm handling the meat. Plus, we'll see at the end here, when you go to shred the meat, these are simply the best way to shred meat versus trying to use forks or shredding fingers or anything like that. It'll work very well. So they clean up super easy. I've used these for years. They're probably the best thing on the market that I've found. We'll put a link in the description below. All right, guys, the time has arrived. We're at 200 degrees internal temperature. I'm gonna pull it off, take it inside, and show you what it looks like. All right, there she is. Been sitting for about 45 minutes. So this was about a 10-hour total smoke. 8 to 9 pound pork shoulder with the bone in. And it should just fall apart as I touch it here, but a good indication is if you can pull that bone out without any meat sticking to it, we did it right, guys. But you should be able to just grab it. Again, if you've use forks or something else, you can separate it. Best method to do it is with these gloves. I'm just gonna take a chunk here, put it over the tin, and look at that. I can't even hang on to it. It just absolutely falls apart. All
All right, everybody, so here's the final product. Holy smokes, this turned out fantastic. It's just falling apart. This will feed probably 15 to 20 people. This is a 9-pound pork shoulder. Super cheap as well. I found this on sale at the grocery store for 99 cents a pound. I bought a couple of them, threw them in the freezer. So again, cheap way to feed a ton of people. The meat turned out fantastic, like I said. I'm gonna have links in the comments below for the smoker and the gloves. See you next time.
Doesn't that look good? Aaron did such a good job with that pork shoulder. He's always the smoking master, smoking meat master. Smoking master? It could go south pretty quickly. Smoking a pork shoulder is our go-to when we're entertaining with large groups of people because it is so cheap to do and it feeds so many. So Aaron had told you that that pork shoulder was an 8 or 9 pounder and that it might feed 15 to 20 people. Guess what? It fed 15 people at the party that we hosted, and we had half of it still left over. That's a lot of pork. So now I want to talk about how we use our leftover pork when we do smoked pork shoulder. It always leaves us with a ton of leftovers, more than we can consume in a week. And so what I do immediately is I freeze batches in gallon Ziploc bags, put them right in the freezer, and it thaws really nicely for different dishes in the future. That way you're only smoking the meat once, you're only cooking the meat once, and then you have lots of future meals that you can get out of it. So if you already know what you're gonna make with your leftover pork, when you're ready to freeze it, portion it off into the portions that you're gonna need for your recipes and put them in individual baggies so that you can freeze it in portions and you don't have to thaw all of your leftovers for one meal. A lot of the recipes that I use are really easy to interchange the kinds of meat that you're gonna use. So if you're gonna make pork tacos, you can also make chicken tacos. If you're gonna make pork pozole, you can also make chicken pozole. If you're gonna use your pork for a shepherd's pie, you can also change that up with chicken or turkey or beef. So for the few recipes that I'm gonna share, it doesn't necessarily have to be pork, though that's what I'm doing. You can use different meats interchangeably as long as you think the flavoring is gonna work well. Now, I always have go-to meals. You probably have go-to meals as well, where you know the recipe by heart, you know that it can be done in 30 minutes, you know that it's a go-to that your family loves, and so those are what I'm going to be sharing today, things that I know are tried and tested in my own family and have been staples for us for quite a few years. Before we get into those specific recipes, I just want to share real quick a list of ways that you can use leftover pork that might be a little bit outside the box or what you normally wouldn't think to use it for. Of course, pulled pork sandwiches is kind of a no-brainer. Slather it in barbecue sauce for a traditional pulled pork, top it with some coleslaw or other picnicky kind of toppings. Or an alternative that's actually very similar is just create lettuce wraps out of your pulled pork leftovers. That is a really nice way to have a healthy meal. You can add soy sauce, you can add all kinds of toppings to your lettuce wraps. We're just gonna take the bread out of the equation on that one. All kinds of casseroles work really well with pulled pork. Shepherd's pie, I already mentioned a little bit earlier, is one option that we do quite often. But the casseroles really give you that like down home comfort food kind of feel out of your leftover pulled pork. I also love to just take my leftover pulled pork, shred it even further into smaller pieces and put it on top of salad. Normally a salad topper might be like chicken, steak, shrimp, but you don't often see pork, and I don't know why, because it tastes really good. So that's another really easy way to create a full meal out of your leftovers. You want to get really creative, you could use it as part of bruschetta. You can create loaded baked potatoes or loaded sweet potatoes and just top it with some pulled pork. You could do a rice bowl with pork as your protein. You can make egg rolls or spring rolls. You can have it be a topper for pastas like macaroni and cheese or fettuccine. It works really well in all kinds of stews and soups. You can even use it in breakfast casseroles. So it's a really versatile meat. There's not a lot of dishes that it wouldn't work in, but there are tons that it does work in. But what I really love about it is that you can get a large roast, cook it once, and if your husband's doing it, that's even better. And then you get so many meals out of it for future use. With that said, let me show you 2 recipes that I love to use pulled pork leftovers for. The kids even like them both, so we're gonna count that as a win. Now, the first recipe that I'm doing is just a very basic taco. So you can use your leftover pulled pork as is and just heat it up in some oil on a frying pan and have that really smoky flavor be the main flavor for your pulled pork tacos. Or you can do what I did and you can add some taco seasoning to it, which is just really simple to do. It heats up very fast and you have a meal that's ready for your family in no time. If your kids are like mine, just put the toppings on the side. The next meal that I love to prepare is actually newer to our family. It is a pulled pork pozole, which is a Mexican stew with hominy as one of the main ingredients. It's really easy to do. It's very much like a chili. You just dump and go. And so it has minimal cutting. You simply cut up red onions, Roma tomatoes, and fry those up with some oil, some garlic, and then you just start dumping. We use chicken broth for ours. I add some non-traditional beans like white kidney beans and black beans rather than the traditional pinto bean. I also add in things like corn rather than just using the hominy. And then I just kind of toss in some extra things that might be not quite a traditional pozole, but taste really good together. I'm gonna link you to the recipe that you can find on my blog for this specific pozole, which is so good. The kids love it. You just stir, you let it cook for 30 minutes, and then you add in your pulled pork leftovers, stir and let it cook for another 30 minutes, and you come out with this really hearty and filling stew that's so healthy for your family. We fried up some tortillas to give them a little bit of crisp crunchiness and extra flavor, topped it with cheese, and then we're good to go. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you got some great ideas for meals that you can feed your family. Make sure hit the subscribe button, get notified when I post new videos, and we'll see you next time.